Thank you, Laura. Hi, everybody. I'm Shannon Bowman, and Laura introduced you just a little bit. I work at Centennial Magnet Middle School that is connected to the Friday Institute. I used to be a sixth grade teacher, and I'm now the University Connections Liaison as well as the leadership teacher. I teach grades 6 through 8, and that's kind of just a little bit of background of where I'm at. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to flip back and forth. There's some points where I'd rather just be talking to you than to have a slide up, so I might unshare the screen and then just kind of talk with you. And this is my first time doing a virtual conference, so I'm just going to let you know up front. So I'm really nervous, so be super flexible with me. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. All right, so I am titling this lesson or this little meeting called Being the Change, How Learning More Changed My Classroom. And this is just some contact information if you ever wanted to contact me to find out more or maybe get a little bit more information on what I did, or even to find out more about the Keenan Fellows program. I'm always willing to talk about it because it is such a great opportunity for teachers throughout the state of North Carolina. I would love to share with you if you ever have more questions. And if you have questions, you can write them in the chat today too, and I can answer those near the end. A few things that we're going to cover today that I was hoping to get for you to get out of this is to learn a little bit more about the Keenan Fellows program at NC State, just because I think all educators could benefit from it, and you may know someone in your building that you might want to let them know about it as well. You're going to hear about a project that I created for students to be involved in current events through my internship with Keenan Fellows and SAMC in right here in the Research Triangle. And then we'll learn how to move from traditional teaching style to facilitator for the students' benefit. And finally, we will leave with some ideas that you can implement in your own school as soon as tomorrow. So let's get started. I'm going to start with just introducing you to the Keenan Fellows. If you know about it, that's great. If you don't, this is really going to be an opportunity that I wish someone had told me about sooner. That may really sound right up your alley. Right now, the applications for this have closed for this school year. However, it comes around every year in January. They open up a new list of opportunities and internships. So I would just star it, put it into my bookmarks on my computer, and look for that because it is an amazing opportunity. So just to start, these are pictures of me with Dr. David Banks and his SAMC team. My internship was using statistics to solve authentic problems. And I chose to get involved with this internship because at the time I was a math teacher, and I really felt strongly about my students realizing that math doesn't only happen in a math classroom, because a lot of students will say, I can't do math, and we all know how that's not true because math is in everything we do, and trying to let them see that every decision they make has something to do with a statistic analysis and then output of a solution. So I really thought that it would help my students. Little did I know I was going to be changing positions and leaving the traditional core subject classroom for a leadership position, but it still worked out great because I was able to turn it into my leadership class. So a little bit about Keenan Fellows. It was founded in 2000. The Keenan Fellows program for teacher leadership addresses the critical need for high-quality professional development for educators and is the largest STEM-focused teacher leadership program in North Carolina. Approximately 25 to 50 outstanding K through 12 teachers from across the state are selected annually for this year-long program. Key components are a 3-week summer internship with a mentor in a research or applied STEM setting, and 80 hours of professional development that builds leadership capacity and promotes curricular design bridging STEM at work with STEM at school. This was a great opportunity simply because I learned so much about corporate world that, you know, teachers sometimes, unless you are lateral entry, don't really have that much experience with. So it's great to see how other people work in their environments and how they collaborate and how what they're doing is directly related to some of the things that we're doing in our classrooms, but we maybe have never been given the opportunity to have those meaningful conversations that build on collaboration. So it was great to be able to have those opportunities to talk with scientists who I really felt 100,000% out of line even being in the same room with them because they were just so brilliant. But it was amazing to have them hear my side of things as a teacher and really find just as much value in what I was saying, which made me feel really like I had a place. And, you know, we all as teachers need to sometimes feel that positive of I'm doing the right thing and what I'm doing matters. And this was that type of experience for me. When I started my program, what I thought was going to happen when I designed my, I guess, my problem-based real life experience for my students was I thought the students would try to solve problems about homework, cell phones, peer relationships, things I thought that was all that mattered to them. And I knew I would get a new project for my students to complete annually. So I was like, wow, great. I'm getting this unit I'm getting to make. So I knew I was going to have something planned that would be great for my students. And then finally, I kind of figured that out of the Keenan Fellows program, I would make some new connections and learn more about myself as a teacher. What happened was really surprising. I have to be honest and say that I was really blown away by my students because when I thought that they were going to want to investigate superficial problems such as their cell phones and, you know, my best friend's mad at me or my boyfriend is TikToking with one of his friends and not paying attention to me, or I wish we didn't have to have homework, they came up with really surprising problems that they wanted to research. And these are some of the topics that they came up with. We had projects on immigration, water pollution, police brutality, the Me Too movement, water conservation, and refugees. I was really taken aback that very first week that I proposed this project to my students. And I said, tell me what burns a fire in your chest when you see it on TV or you hear someone talking about it. What is that thing that in your body you're just like, I wish someone would change that. I wish someone would do something about it. Why does it have to be that way? And when they came up with these answers, I was just so blown away that these 8th graders were so in tune with current events happening around them. I know some of the, you know, things like immigration might be a personal family thing that is really going on, or police brutality, maybe there's stories in their family being told of things that have happened to family. But it was amazing to me that when I gave the opportunity to research anything, maybe not everything that I think a teacher is what I ended up being. Who I am as a teacher. And then I improved on myself as a teacher. I'm going to try and do my best to kind of filter back and forth between the two screens and put up the links and play them for you. So you might need to make sure your volume is up because there are videos of students that may not be that loud, but I'll make them as loud as I possibly can. So to start, before we did anything with the project, I came up with the name. And my favorite quote as a teacher is "Be the change you wish you could see in the world" by Mahatma Gandhi. And I decided to really embrace that with this program because I really wanted students to understand that not only adults can make big changes, not only adults can change the world, but students as young as 8th grade and younger can say, hey, I don't like the way things are going. And they should feel validated and supported enough to speak up and try to make those changes. So I very clearly made them a syllabus, along with, if you look down in the bottom left corner, there is a grading rubric that was given to them at the very beginning of class so that they knew the expectation and what I was looking for. They were given this rubric and then asked to refer back to it over and over and over again, just to make sure that they were really hitting their targets and making sure that the project that they were working on was meeting my expectations. The big focus for this, and how I presented it to them, was that for this project, you will use your world, the one you see and interact with, to plan a way to fix something you wish you could change. You will research that problem, finding statistics on how frequently this problem takes place, and other facts that influence the problem. So that was all I said to them. I said, I just want you to interact with your world and tell me something you wish you could make better, something that you want to be a part of the change. And that's where they took it and they ran far beyond what my expectations could have been. This process mirrors the design thinking process as discussed yesterday with Brian Whitson. So if you were in on that session, a lot of what we do through this project really mirrored what he was talking about with the design thinking. So if you're interested in more about this specific process and a more structured idea of how to work through this, you could contact him or even come and contact me through email. I'd be willing to talk with you more. It is a great and useful process for both students and teachers, as I learned. This part of the project was where students had already stepped in. They had researched the project that really got under their skin, and this is where they started sketching an invention that they thought would solve the problem. The invention did not have to be something realistic. They were able to think of a fictitious invention, and as long as it solved the problem that they were investigating, they had free reign to do anything that they wanted. The way that I said it to them was, imagine you have all resources at your disposal. What would you create? The invention that you see that says invisible elevator, and the reason was to help stop immigration. And what that student meant was they felt that there were a lot of things in their way of family members of trying to come into the United States because of Border Patrol. So this student designed an invisible elevator, and this elevator was meant for immigrants to get in on one side of the country over the border. They could insert their money to pay to still come over and pay the fees, and then they would get in the elevator and it would secretly put them over the line and get them into the country. Now, obviously there were things to talk about that maybe would hinder this invention, but what the initial idea was for the students just to be creative, was for them just to say, how could I solve this problem? This means something to me, and if I could do something about it, this is what I would create. As an 8th grader, maybe they're not thinking about all of the logistics and the things that go into that and what would happen if everybody did that. It was just meant for a solution to their problem. Another really great invention that came up was this super secret collar that has the red circle in it in the middle. This student was really focused on animal cruelty around the world and was really trying to put a stop to it. The idea behind this collar was that the animal would wear the collar, and if an animal was being hurt in any way or mistreated, it would send off a signal from the collar to the authorities so that the authorities could find the animal and help the animal get out of the struggling situation. The invention over to the far right, I know some of our chat windows might be covering it a little bit. This invention really, it really shocked me that nobody had thought of it before. Maybe someone had, but it was the first time it was brought to my attention. This student was researching school shootings, which is obviously, if you're an educator, is near and dear to your heart and you wish it wasn't. And so when he said, I really want them to stop, I don't want this to be a thing anymore, I could not be more behind him and support him in any more way. He actually went out and measured our fire doors that separate our hallways that automatically close from the magnet. And he designed an invention that was almost like a lock system that once those magnets release the doors to close, that they would also release a lever that would fall down over the bars that you push in to be able to walk out. And that would keep the doors from opening on either way, either pushing out or pulling them open, which would hinder an intruder from coming down into the classroom space. He actually ended up printing this and putting it into 3D model from a 3D printer. And he did a great job really explaining this and doing the research and measuring it out and making a model of it. I was very impressed with this project in general. During this time, students also interviewed their peers. So after they drew their inventions, they sat in almost like a speed dating line. I had them sit in chairs straight across from each other, and I had them take 3 minutes to explain their problem and their invention. The goal behind this was devil's advocate. I wanted the other peers to say, well, what about this? What would happen if this didn't work? And what about these materials? To really make them then think again about their project and go back to the drawing board and improve it. I want students to understand that, you know, things aren't always going to be a one and done. We need to build some of that grit and resiliency. And it was a great opportunity because students were really hearing each other talk about real issues. It wasn't superficial school conversations. They were really talking about things that mattered to them. And it was great to hear, oh, I wish someone would fix that. That really is something that bothers me. The conversations that came out of this speed dating day were some of my most favorite conversations from this project, because it made me realize that we have good people coming up in this world. We have great students who are going to be leaving our schools that are really ready to tackle some very big issues that are going to be great for our world. These are a few examples of some of the work that students did during this project. So this, the picture up top is of a student named Kenny, and this shows the research that they did. So they had to start by just doing basic research on the internet, and they looked into the problem, where it was happening, what demographic of people was it happening to, what statistics could they find on it, and they just took down a bunch of research. So this was a great skill for them in general, just to find reliable resources and for them to make sure that the information aligned whenever they read it on maybe 2 different publications. But hey, I saw one statistic on one place and I saw another on the second resource. So then they really had to learn what's real and what's not, and really had to go back to finding what primary resources were. So even though we're in a leadership class, they're doing such in-depth work that is really going to benefit them in their EL classrooms as well. They had to do a lot of reflection during this project, and I would just send them out a Google Doc, and that was an assignment that they had to just share with me what they did for that day. For example, this reflection says, I'm researching marine pollution. The reason that I want to do this is because I saw a video that was saying that if we don't do anything, the oceans and coral reefs would be clear of almost all marine life by 2050. That is not very far away. That's a really great thing for an 8th grader to realize, that the things that we're doing today in 2050 is really not that far away, 30 years from now. And for them to start thinking, wow, this is a problem. And maybe that's not something that they talk about around their dinner table. But now that they've seen this video and they've had this opportunity to really dive into something that matters to them, maybe it will become a conversation around the dinner table. And that's really what this is all about. I want my students to learn that they matter, that their voices matter. And if they start caring about it and they start talking about it with their peers, then their peers are going to care about it. And then stuff's going to happen. Changes are going to be made. They're going to really influence their lives. Down in the bottom left corner, you can see a group of students. This was another opportunity when they were sharing their inventions and their ideas during a collaboration session. And that was really key to me. I really wanted them to have the opportunity to share what was mattering to them. You know, some of these ideas, like the Me Too movement, when one of my students brought up the Me Too movement, which it can be a very touchy conversation, was really nice for them to have those conversations with those peers. Has this happened to you? Has anyone ever DM'd you on your Instagram account? Did you know that person? Then we got into conversations about, you know, safety on the internet, and we talked as a classroom. So a lot of things came out of this this project that I never would have even predicted. And I think it all stems from the fact that I really started stepping away. I had an overarching idea of what I wanted the students to end with, but their path and their design really came from them. And I cannot express to you the amount of engagement that was in my classroom on a daily basis. Students who were failing other classes would come in there and they would dive right in immediately. And I think that what I learned from that was these students just, you know, they're always asking for an opportunity to do the things that they're interested in. And I think that when they were given this opportunity, they really showed that they mean that when something is really put in front of them that they care about, they give 110%. And it was amazing to see students that maybe you don't always see that from really dive in and show you what they're capable of. It really helped me change some perspectives on some of my students. These are the surveys that my students created. This was another aspect of this project, and they had to create a survey to send out to their peers and their family, so that they could then be doing some research themselves, not only taking research from the internet and things that other people had done, but also coming up with questions themselves and then analyzing those results to see how to make their invention really reflect their research. So we worked on questions. We shared them with just the class at first, and then we talked about how can we alter some of these questions. And then we really had to talk about, okay, so if we're going to share these out, what's our avenue? How are we going to do this? And then we ended up sharing with our parents and allowing our parents to post on social media or share even with their family and friends that maybe the student didn't have in their network on their phones. Some students, only got like 15 responses back. Some students got 150 responses back. So we were able to have another conversation about networking and how when things are, only talked about in a small circle, these same type of people may have the same belief, but once you really spread it out, you start seeing how different beliefs add value to the conversation. So we were able to really build on this project in so many ways, and it really kept spider webbing off to other opportunities as a teachable moment that I never put into my lesson plan. I did not have those things planned. I didn't know that's what this project was going to create. And so every day I was really coming in and saying, okay, what are we going to do today? What's our game? What's our goal with this opportunity I'm giving you? Yes, I'm telling you the thing you need to work on is your survey. Then what are we going to do with it? Where are you going to take it from there? And I really put it in their hands. And that really leads me to, kind of why we're having this conversation today, is allowing students to really be the driving force behind these things that we are giving our students, these opportunities, making sure that they are making them their own and not only differentiating for the students by, maybe throwing their interest into a math problem or, changing an assignment, but by differentiating, but really differentiate, allow each student to make it their own. And if we do it by a rubric and we say, this is just really what we want at the end game, you design how we get there. The path was something I could never have done myself, even after 14 years of teaching. They brought more to the table than I think I ever could have brought. The next thing I'm going to do is, I think that I'm going to look and see. Yeah, I'm trying to see how many. So we're at about 25 participants. So I think we're going to do where you can just share in the chat. I'm going to play the video by both Ethan and Brittany, and I'll play it for you so that it makes it a little bit easier for you. We're going to hear from them. I just took them out in the hallway and I gave them a quick interview about how their project was going. Up to this point, Brittany and Ethan have done some research on their project, and they decided what their problem was going to be, and now they're starting to think about how they're going to solve it. So you'll see that they're at two different stages in the project. However, I want you to hear what they're passionate about. I want you to hear, what they're doing to try and solve this. And then I want you to remember that they're in 8th grade. They're in middle school. This was first semester of 8th grade. So they're little. And I just wanted you to hear some of the things that they did.
Hey, Shannon, for some reason we can't hear the video.
Oh.
I was just checking some settings, thinking it might have been on my end, but it looks like other folks can't hear it either.
Okay. Well, and then we'll kind of improvise then in that way. And
okay.
I'll just kind of explain to you what they said. And basically what Brittany was just sharing is that she was researching police brutality, and that the invention that she decided to come up with, based on the fact that she kept seeing it on TV and she thought it was just happening too frequently, she said that she designed a software that for each call that came in through the call center that requested help or assistance, it would randomize the police officers that attended that call. She believed that it had to do with the type of officers answering the phone call. And so her solution was she was trying to find a way where they could not know what type of calls they were going to, and it would randomize who would show up. And that was her invention. Ethan's focus was on water pollution, and he was trying to figure out a way to keep, landfills and people from dumping things into the water that he believed to be causing, obviously, a lot of pollution and harm to the marine biology life. And he, during this video, didn't actually have a solution, but he said that he just felt it was super important because he was really nervous for his kids that maybe we would be losing our water because he knew that we didn't use a large majority of it already, and that he thought the percentage of what we were using was being damaged, and he was trying to find a way for us to really clean up that situation. So again, 8th graders really coming to the table with these really large issues and really trying to tackle these problems that even as adults, there are scientists that are, geared just to try and tackle these ideas. And these 8th graders are really racking their brains and trying to find a solution. During this time, students were asked to reflect along this process. They were told why, or to think and ask themselves, why is this problem so important to you? Why do you think it is a problem? How could you fix this? Does your invention actually solve the problem, or is it just an invention that doesn't actually tackle the real problem? And then, are you pleased with your progress on the problem? Throughout this process, we kept going back to these questions, and they would keep pulling up their rubrics, looking at the rubrics and seeing, am I really touching the goal of this project? Or am I still really off base? And so we really tried to help them learn how to use a rubric accurately and go step by step in each category and make sure that they were staying the task, because it is hard if I'm not designing every single day and every lesson to make sure that we don't get to the end of a project and half the kids don't have it done the way we need it to be done, or it's not meeting the expectations. So we kept trying to teach them time management and planning out their project, and really going back to that rubric and how meaningful that is when a teacher does give you a rubric and how to use it to your benefit. The last thing I'm going to show you about this project and how it ended was we celebrated their hard work for this semester with our Night of Excellence here at our school, where the community was opened, or the doors were open to community. So teachers, staff, we had professors even from NC State and Duke came. I invited a lot of our stakeholders. And as they were presenting, this was their last part of their project. I took a rubric around and I graded their presentations and their projects. And they talked out loud about why this mattered to them, to their peers, and to adults. So you can see that there are a lot of different, you can see in one picture, I'm actually grading one student. The bottom left project is a street cleaner. She wanted to make trucks that went around and cleaned debris with arms. So she made a garbage truck that had arms that would pick up garbage as it drove around the streets. And then you can see over on the right-hand side, just, them walking through the gallery. Students were so professional and they did such a great job, and they felt so proud of themselves after this. I had a lot of staff members come up to me and tell me how surprised they were by how these students talked about these real world problems. And I think what it did for even my staff was open up their eyes to the possibilities for these students, and said, they're capable of a lot and we should give them the opportunities to do it. And I think that was really helpful for the students, because then they were done and they could go and talk to their teachers about these. One student actually took his invention from this project and turned it into his STEM fair project that's being presented tomorrow during the STEM fair. So he took what we did and he built on it and turned it into a STEM fair project so that he could share more about something that he really felt passionately about. And I'm going to pause for just a second and see if there were any questions. If you wanted to put in a few questions into the chat, I can see if I can answer anything up to this point about the project in specific. Just noticing that we have a few people where you're joining from. Okay, if we don't have any questions, I'll go ahead into the last part of this project. And this is really where the project paid off for me, how it influenced my classroom, what it did for me as a teacher, and how it kind of came full circle to benefit not only my students, but it then in turn benefited me greater than I ever expected. This project yielded a change in my classroom structure. For it to touch on all of the aspects of this classroom, I really wanted to focus on allowing students to find their voice in a multiple set of ways. I did it in many different ways throughout this project. My classroom structure changed where we weren't only focusing on this project, but we tried to find a way for students to not only find their voice in a project, but also with their peers and their the adults around them that matter. We talked about learning differences and how to speak up to your teachers and how to really voice the things that you need. Maybe I need to sit closer, or maybe I can't sit next to my friend, but really learning how to use that voice and in a respectable way, ask for change, ask for something to change that maybe they felt they didn't always have that avenue to do. We did circle every Monday. And on circle that we did, it's a restorative practice where we came together and we kind of set the tone for the week. And we covered anything that maybe was on their minds that maybe was hindering them. We also allowed students to find their voice, not only through the personal project, but then during debates on Fridays. I would take a current event on Thursdays and present it to the students, and then they would present a debate in small groups of 2 to 3 students. And they practice their speaking skills and their research using evidence, just like they have to find the gist in their EL curriculum right now. They'd find the gist of the research that they were using as well to then find a debate purpose and argue with their peers about whether or not they were correct. So a few things that came out of this project. Students were selected for this leadership class. The way we structured this class is I sat down with administration, and we really wanted the students that came into this class to be purposeful. We wanted the students who are on the cusp of, we really see leadership potential in these students. We see them struggling a little bit. We know some of them may not be doing that great in class, or maybe they're wrapped up in their peers, but we see peers following them. They look to them for guidance. They look to them as, what are you going to do next so I know how to behave? So students were selected for the leadership class based on needed leadership support, struggling academically, or peer relationship support needed. Maybe they were struggling with friendships or learning how to be effective in a classroom. So we pulled those students specifically. On top of that, the classroom structure was designed to help students personally, but also prove to them that they were capable of more. We reiterated this concept over and over again, telling the kids, you can do this. You can have your voice. You can speak up. You have to say, I as a human need this, or I as a human care about this topic. And really try to push the idea behind them that you don't need to be a certain age before your voice matters, and allow them to really find some value in each other's voices so that they could collectively come behind each other and support each other, because that's just as meaningful as them going behind a teacher and really supporting what a teacher says, or thinking the teacher is the end all know all of all knowledge. I really wanted them to find out that they really have just as much knowledge as I do, and in the same spots that I can get knowledge, they can get knowledge. I may have more professional experience, but we are all living in the same world, and we're all experiencing a lot of the same things, which provide us all with the same opportunity to be just as meaningful with our words. So this is how I organized my class. This is what it looked like every single week. They never questioned what each day was going to be, which solved a lot of problems for some of these students that were struggling in their other classrooms. They always knew the schedule. They came in on Monday and they said, Miss Bowman, are we going to do circle today? Every Monday we're doing circle. So no matter what was going on, if we skipped a day of school or we came back late, every Monday they knew we were going to do circle. And that was their time for us to come together as a team, as a community, and talk about the things that mattered. Maybe during that circle time, we talked about things that were happening that was bothering them in other classes, or maybe even something that was going on with this project in the classroom. Hey, I've really hit a roadblock. I don't know what to do next. I have this invention, but I'm not exactly sure how to build it, because at the end they had to make a 3D model. So this is where we did a lot of even project planning and talking through some of our problems that we couldn't see ends to. Talking as a team and in a circle really helped them. Then on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, this was the time when they really worked on their project. This is when they did their research. This is when they did their models, when they drew, when they answered any reflection questions. And so that I could check in with them, do conferencing with the students, and really check in to make sure that we were on pace as to where we needed to be by getting to our Night of Excellence after school celebration. On Thursday, we also broke that day into debate preparation day. That's when I would present to them the debate for the week, and I would let them know what our topic was going to be. I'd put them into teams, and then they would sit together and fill out a graphic organizer about their debate and prep for the debate. And then on Friday was debate day. Debate day was a very popular day. Students loved being able to get up on a stage. I have a lit up stage in my classroom, and they loved being able to get up on that stage and really talk with their peers. They learned how to voice their opinions without screaming at each other, and to provide evidence as to what they were saying and make their arguments stronger. We had students who couldn't stand on the stage at the beginning of the semester, standing on stage by the end of the semester with their shoulders held back and looking up at their peers in the eyes, which really helped and benefited them during our presentations at Night of Excellence. I think that this was really beneficial for several reasons. They always knew what to expect. There were no surprises as to what we were doing in class. The schedule never changed, so that opportunity for those students who need that regimen routine, that was really beneficial for them. Even though we were doing something different, they knew what was coming. This really taught the teachers how to use their voice, and it helped also me for planning. I mean, I knew exactly on Monday what we were setting up for the week, and all I had to do on Monday was really roll out the plan for where we needed to be by Friday, and then I allowed them to take it Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and they made it their own. So it really helped me step back as well from feeling like I needed to be in the front of the classroom and always giving all of the instruction, to them giving me a lot of instruction and teaching me a lot of things about the way that they worked as students, which helped me go back to some of their core teachers and talk to them about things that I was discovering about them in a maybe not an environment that they always see in their classrooms. So it also helps some students make connections with their core teachers. This is where my change in mindset came. And I think that this is where a lot of the idea behind this particular presentation came from. As a teacher, I always really firmly believed that I needed to be at the front of the classroom. I needed to be the one who was running things. I had the organization. I knew how long we needed to be in small groups, and then how long they needed for collaboration. Then we're going to come back. We're going to share out what we learned, and then they were going to go into independent practice. And as a math and science teacher, that paid off for many years, and it worked. However, when we adopted a new math curriculum a few years ago, that had to start changing. And then with this program, I really had to measure myself as a teacher and find out where I was really comfortable. And I won't lie, I really was very uncomfortable. Sometimes I felt like I wasn't doing anything. And I would say that to my principal, I'd say, well, I'm not really teaching, I'm not doing anything. And there was a lot of times she had to remind me that, even if the words aren't coming out of my mouth, I was still being a teacher. I was still being a mentor. I was still having their back. And that doesn't fall apart from what a teacher is. It's not too dissimilar from what our real role is as teachers. It does come with curriculum and it does come with lessons. However, our goal is to be in that classroom and be a support base for our students. And I had to alter that definition for myself and the vision that I thought that it represented. I really had to purposely make myself not stand in the front of the classroom. I took out rows in my classroom. I put a lot of flexible seating. I took out most of the tables so that kids were sitting on the floor. I put in more clipboards and less tables, like I said. I just really had to reevaluate what I thought a teacher was. And I think that nobody put those ideas in my head as to what I needed to be as a teacher. It's just what I envisioned a teacher to be and what I saw when I was growing up. And so I just tried to emulate that without thinking outside the box. And what I learned from my students was when I thought outside the box, and what happened in my classroom was more miraculous than anything that I could have planned for. And I really was very happy that when I stepped back and I said, okay, what is this classroom going to look like now? How am I going to shift myself as a teacher? And I had to be okay with the struggle. I had to be okay that some days I was going to revert back to that old way, and then I would need to reflect and say, okay, I need to put them back in the driver's seat, because my days where I put those students in the driver's seat were my easiest class managed days I had. There was not any issue. There was no defiance. There was no one who didn't want to comply. There was no sitting back, I'm not going to do this. But when I tried to hold the reins and really control it, there was a lot more, not resistance, but more hesitation to really be themselves and put forth all that they could. And so I really had to learn that I was really benefiting my students the least amount I tried to control this process. And the more I said, I trust you, the better and more of what I saw out of my students. I'm just making sure I covered everything real quick. I guess it really came down to the reflection was not only for the students, but it was also for myself. Here's some, a little part of what I learned through this process was trying to find a way to connect with our students where they didn't only see me as an academic resource, but as a resource for just things that happen in life. Hey, I started holding free hugs here signs. And in the morning when they got off the buses, at the first few days, they looked at me like I was crazy. Like, no, Miss Bowman, we're not giving you hugs. And then I just kept standing there and I kept holding the sign every single morning. And what happened was miraculous. I started getting parents jumping out of the cars during carpool. I had students getting out and asking if they could hold the sign for their peers. I had 8th graders getting off and fist bumping the new 6th grader holding the sign and making those connections across our building. And this all came from me saying, what can I do outside of what I've already been doing? Me trying to find new ways to connect with my students and let them know that teachers aren't only here academically and you aren't only successful based on your grades, but you're successful based on your relationships that you build and the way that you treat other humans. And I think that, the quote, be the change you wish to see in the world, just kept reiterating in my head of what can I do to help these kids see that these things matter more above other things that maybe are always put on the front burner, when we should really be focusing on helping these students become the best humans that they can be and really helping them find how strong they are on themselves and trust themselves a little bit more. This is another informational sheet on the things that I did in my classroom that I think really changed after this project. I restructured my classroom environment. I provided a framework for students to work with that weekly schedule. I provided clear expectations of the outcome of their project with a rubric. I removed myself from the front and allowed students to use project days to really dive into their projects at their own pace, which means that they weren't always at the same stage, and that was okay. And that was really something hard for me to manage, but it was natural for them. They just moved at what pace that they needed. And it was really up to me just to make sure that I kept behind them and made sure that the pace was just forward moving. And I allowed my students to take control. And when I allowed my students to take control, I really learned so much from them. Over on the left-hand side, you can see a way that I did my classroom roles. We talk about Covey a lot in my school. We're a leadership magnet school. And I really tried to frame this as, a lot of times teachers will come in with predetermined ideas of what their class rules are already, but then they let the class come up with a list of things that they want in the class. And then they're like, oh, so what you meant to say was we will respect each other. And I tried to come away from that a little bit because I wanted them to see why we have classroom rules. So I explained that Miss Bowman needs to win in this classroom. I need them to learn, but I also want them to win because I want them to enjoy their time in the classroom and also get something from it so that when they leave, they feel like they are growing. So we made lists. What things did they need to feel like they were winning and what things did I need to feel like I was winning in the classroom? And then we worked together just to come up with lists that those became our class rules. And for each period that I teach, we have a different set of class wins and Miss Bowman's wins. And to finalize my part of this presentation, I wanted to give you a quote that I've started saying to my students that many students have came up to me and said has really changed the way they think about things. A lot of times we tell students that we need 100% of what they've, 100% of their work or 100% of what they've got to give. And what they hear is that if they don't have 100%, then what they've got is not good enough. And we all know that we don't always walk into work with 100%. We don't always have 100%. We have other things going on in our life too. But I can tell you most teachers walk in the door and give 100% of what they've got. And I started saying that to my students. I started saying, just give me 100% of what you've got today. Give me 100% of what you're willing to give me or what you've got left in you from what you're dealing with. And I started getting so much more out of my students just by telling them I understood that they had other things going on and meeting them in the middle. I never lowered my expectations, and I never will. I will always have high expectations for my students, but I wanted them to know that I get it, that not all days are equivalent and there are things that happen in our lives. But as long as we come in and we're willing to give 100% of what we've got left in us, then we will always be successful. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you were able to use a little bit of what I talked about today and maybe implement some of these ideas in your classroom.
Thank you, Shannon. If you have questions, we have a couple minutes here, just post them in the chat. But I just loved your reflections and I say your glows and your grows, because you were very reflective in what went well and the change that you saw in students, but then also how it changed you and what you're going to continue to do. So yes, thank you for sharing that. Very, very inspiring. And the student examples were really neat too. And I figured out, we do have a minute if you wanted to show us the video, or we can go back and link it. Well, if you will have to go into your settings or your preferences and then change the audio output to change it instead of computer. So anyways, but if we don't have time for that, that is fine, because Shannon has shared her presentation link for us. That's on the conference schedule. So if you click the link, we'll be able to hear it that way as well. But I think you did a good job recapping and
well, thank you. And then also, if you go back and you look at the resource, there is a link on the slide that says the new design. It's a hyperlink where it says new design. And if you click that, that'll also give you a tour of my classroom and what it looks like now that I've changed the way that I've set it up. So when you guys go back and you look at that resource, that you can also click as a link.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great. Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure Shannon would be willing, if you're wanting to embark on something like this, reaching out to her and connecting with her. She's very receptive to all of that. So if we don't have any questions, I'm just going to take 1 minute here to close up some things by just reminding you to complete, if you could, a evaluation for Shannon. It just helps. As you can tell, she's a very reflective person, so she'd love your feedback. And we would as well, just as we continue to grow this conference. Just if you could share with us what you liked and what helped you in your professional journey. You will see those evaluations linked on the conference schedule, along with the link to her presentation. But then also you'll see we have more sessions now at, 3 o'clock Eastern time, and our closing keynote is at 5 o'clock Eastern. So if you can continue to join us, that would be wonderful. At the conclusion of the conference this evening, you will be emailed a evaluation for the conference as a whole. And if you would like to receive renewal credits or a certificate for completion of this conference, you'll need to complete that evaluation, that general conference evaluation, and then any evaluations for the sessions that you've attended. So we really are also very reflective folks here, and so we take your feedback very seriously. So please let us know what you liked about the conference as a whole. And just thank you for your engagement today, for posting in the chat and engaging with us. So we hope to see you in our next session. And thank you again to Shannon for taking this time out of your day to share these awesome things that you're doing and that your kids are doing. So thank you so much, everybody. I will go ahead and end the meeting if there are no other questions. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.